Hey everyone, I hope you guys are doing well down in Texas and all over the world. I wanted to talk to you guys for a few minutes about one of the most inspirational and influential people that I have ever known. Growing up, I had a friend, his name was Joe. In about the 10th grade, Joe and I had been friends off and on. He was an athlete, he played football, really into sports, cars, music, all the teenage guys are into that. But in about the 10th grade, Joe went in for a CAT scan due to some headaches that he was having. The result came back that Joe had a brain tumor. Now, that was a big deal because for me, I'm thinking, hey, we're not even out of high school yet. We're supposed to do some things. There are plans that God has for us. I always felt that God had a huge plan on my life, and I felt that everyone else should feel the same way too. However, Joe was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He went on through a year of chemotherapy, and after a year of chemotherapy, he actually made a huge recovery. And I remember one time riding in the car with Joe, and he was telling me how the doctors had told him that he would never be able to play sports again. He would never be able to walk in a straight line again. Plus, driving was out of the question. And I remember all that because Joe had just picked me up from my house in his car. We were driving to the basketball court to go play basketball, play sports. So he had made a huge recovery, huge turnaround. And for me, I'm watching one of my best friends and his family go through the hardest time in his life. And of course, after that, after high school, I went to Teen Mania, went to the Honor Academy, spent 2 years there, and during my second year, I found out that Joe, his cancer had come back, and it was worse than before. I had a few chances to go and visit him. It got to the point where Joe was bedridden, and he wasn't able to communicate without writing on a piece of paper and reading it, because he couldn't hear and he couldn't speak. The only thing he could do was read, and then he would try to respond back the best that he could. So I went over to his house, and I would write on the paper and give it to him. He would read it and laugh, depending on what I wrote, and then he would try to answer me the best way that he could. And I saw him like that, and I saw him, and I wondered in my mind, how in the world can he do that and still be able to laugh? How is he able to do that? He was so full of joy. There was no doubt in his mind that God was going to heal him. So I went through my time at the Honor Academy knowing that back home, one of my best friends is in the middle of a struggle for his life. It's one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And it came down, I was at the end of my second year, it came down to the graduation. I was about to graduate from the Honor Academy, and the day of graduation I got a call from my mother saying Joe had died. Now, of course, I'm heartbroken, and the build-up until graduation is huge at Teen Mania, so everyone's all excited, and I'm like, yeah, I'm about to graduate, and then I get the call saying my best friend is dead. And of course I was heartbroken. I went to the funeral, got to see the family and all that. And at that point in my life, God was doing a lot in me. He was showing me a lot. One of the biggest things in Scripture that he was showing me at the time was in 1 Corinthians. And that's 1 Corinthians 3, 1 through 11. That was a huge passage where it talks about God being a God of comfort, who comforts us in all our afflictions, so that when we are in affliction, we receive comfort from God so that we may comfort others when they're going through the same thing. So that was a huge kind of that ministered to me in a huge way. And so when I left the Honor Academy, I went to the funeral and talked to the family, and I was actually able, because of that scripture, I was able to pour into the lives of other people. Now, of course, I know that Joe is healed and he's in heaven. And now I know that I'm equipped with the ability to minister to other people who have gone through the same thing. Maybe maybe someone, maybe you have experienced the death of a loved one. Maybe you have experienced seeing a loved one go through a period of trials and go through who knows what addictions. Maybe they've gone through, maybe they're broke, maybe they've had financial issues, whatever it is. But here is the key. Here's what is so great about God and what He's called us to do. God has called us as Christians to persevere. We're not called to gripe and complain. We're not called to just sit back and avoid trial. We're called to press through trial. And the reason for that is God is glorified no matter what. He could wipe out all sin and wipe out all evil in the world and He would be glorified. But when we, of our own choosing, press through trial and choose to follow God and choose to live with joy and choose to follow the calling that He has on our lives, He is all the more glorified than He ever could be if He just, wiped everything out for us. And the devil is all the more defeated when we, the people that he is trying to control and take away from God, choose to follow God.